Hey, fellow golfers, this is Robbie from Best Ball. One of the most popular names in the golf accessory market today is Western Birch. Stop reaching in your pocket for boring plastic or plain white golf tees and elevate your game with premium wooden golf tees from Western Birch. You can customize both the hardwood and bamboo tees with one of their signature stripe patterns in a wide variety of colors. These tees are stylish enough to stand apart from the crowd, traditional enough to align with golf's heritage, and durable enough to make you forget about using anything else. Enter the code BESTBALL in the promo field in your shipping cart to add a free gift to your order. So visit westernbirch.com and get your own premium wood golf tees in the style that suits your game.
But we all have our problems. And I just would like to think that the one thing I've taken out of my struggles is to be a more empathetic person. And that doesn't mean I don't have strong views. I have very strong views on a number of things: politics, religion, social issues of our time, economic policies, all that. I have very strong views. Mm-hmm. But if I haven't been asked for them, I don't necessarily feel the need to always share them. Mm-hmm. And then also, regardless of those views, the person across from me is deserving of my care and compassion and empathy. And I think that that's just how we were designed to live. And if we would do that, we would help, maybe not eliminate, but help stem some of the struggles that so many people go through. Hello and welcome again to the Caddie Tales Podcast. I'm Mark the Caddy, joined by my sidekick, colleague, friend, Nick, and we're excited to talk to you about how this beautiful game of golf and our life in it intersects with our life off the course so often, and there's beautiful lessons that can translate to both places and help us grow and be better. So here we are again. Nick, how you doing today?
Good, man. We got a rare, nice day here. We had a little rain this week. I think I saw on the news that we had like 20 inches for the month, which is up like 13 inches since May last year. So
yeah,
quite the rainy month for us here.
I believe that this last rainfall we had on Tuesday may have pushed us to the wettest May in the history of the county. Yeah. If it's not that, it's one of the 2 or 3 wettest in the history of the county. And we won't get into this a lot today, but it has wreaked a little bit of havoc on a few of the golf courses. Mm-hmm. And we have pretty world-class drainage at these places. And for the first time that I can ever remember, yesterday, on a day that it didn't rain, the fairways were wet. Mm-hmm. And usually they drain so well that, that's gone by even the day of.
Yeah. Yep.
It's been just unrelenting rain and wind. And here we're not on the golf course today, and it's gorgeous outside. So
of course.
I guess that's how life works. But what was your favorite moment from this past week, Nick?
Well, this kind of actually ties in. I actually kind of enjoyed the rain days, not the rain, obviously, but all the camaraderie that, we give off in the caddy shack, and just everyone kind of sharing their war stories while we're waiting there, trying to get back out. And it was kind of nice. It was nice.
Yeah. I was telling that to a player, an older gentleman that I had this last week, and we were on the 17th tee box, and he was done with golf, so he was just chatting me up a little bit more by then, and it was related to the weather. I can't remember now what specific thing brought it up, but I was saying, one of the really great things about the life is when you gather after something big, and whether it's weather or something is golf related, and we just have that shared story, and we have also, I think, the ability, like if you started a story there at the shack, Nick, I think I could actually tell the rest of the story without having been there or even know it, just because it happens so much. Wouldn't you agree that you could do the same thing for a lot of guys?
I would absolutely agree. Yeah, there's definitely some guys that have shared stories multiple times, and you can kind of guess what they're going to say next.
Yeah,
but it's all kind of fun.
Yeah, or we could just finish each other's sentences. Like, for instance, when somebody just shows up and on a day where it's going to rain the whole round, and they just say, "Well, it's all part of the experience." Like every
Mm-hmm.
caddy knows what that
Mm-hmm.
means
Yeah.
in caddy
Interesting.
language or golf course language. So yeah, I love the camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about that all the time. It's amazing. For me, my favorite moment this last week was I got to caddy for a guy and his buddies who turned out to be super cool guys. I think you were on the loop with
Okay.
Rob and guys from Hawaii.
I was not on that one.
Oh no, that was the other guy
That's right.
that I often caddy with. Anyways, um, I've met Rob and chatted with him, online, and he came to the course and we connected. And not only was his group super cool and just loved being out there in the way that we love to see golfers enjoy the experience. I mean, they were all average to good golfers. Actually, the best golfer in the group had the worst luck as far as like he'd miss a shot by 2 feet and all of a sudden
Oh,
it's
no, I hadn't heard
it
that.
goes 2 feet from amazing and perfect to buried
Yeah.
in a unplayable spot almost. So
Yeah.
but he had an amazing attitude. But Rob works in social media, helps big brands grow their social media,
Okay.
and so he's on a much grander scale. But he was just graciously giving me all this kind of feedback and advice as far
Oh,
as us wanting to grow this podcast, me wanting to grow some things on X so that I can use that platform to maybe
mhm.
do some bigger business, and had some really remarkable insights, really helpful insights, and just loved talking with him. And so I was really thankful for that opportunity. And again, just another example of the type of people we get to meet out there. There is no shortage of just amazing professions and careers and success. And
Yep.
I actually had a guy yesterday uh, who pretty much, if you're going to eat any smoked fish
Yeah.
in the area or pretty much anywhere east of where Arizona, uh, it probably goes through his smokery.
Okay.
So
That's
yeah,
pretty
so I'm
cool.
gonna get.
I had a cardiologist yesterday, and at one point he was like, just golf's not that serious. I deal with people that are having heart attacks every day,
Yeah,
so why
yeah,
take it so serious? And I was like, yeah, that's pretty brilliant, actually. Yeah, that makes a
yeah.
lot of sense.
No, that's good. That's
Hmm.
good. I actually caddied for a cardiologist from the same group earlier in the week, and
Hmm.
when I passed up a hot dog at the turn window, they were
They were amazed.
praising me as though I had just made a hole in one or something.
You're never gonna believe this, but the same guy that I caddied for yesterday had 10 brats during the week. 10 brats. I'm like, how are you a cardiologist? What are you doing? He's
Life
like,
is complicated.
yeah,
My cardiologists seem to want me to have a healthy heart.
yeah, he's
So
nuts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, okay, Nick. Today though, I want to shift gears to something a little more serious. The tone of our episode today probably just a little bit deeper and more serious than the stuff we normally do. And it's inspired by the news that came out over this past weekend about Grayson Murray
Hmm.
and his tragic taking of his own life.
Hmm.
And usually you have to speculate if someone does that, but this news has been very public and confirmed by his family.
Yeah.
And so we certainly, grieve for them and with them. It's got to be just for a parent so hard. Any loss of a child would be like, I think, the worst thing you live through.
Yeah, that's what I've
But
heard.
when you lose a child in that way
Hmm.
and you have to live with all the baggage that comes with that. I mean, I think about them. I don't know them. I wouldn't know what they look like. I don't even know their names. And yet I have found myself this week just thinking about them, not only having to deal with this, but having to deal with it in the public eye. And it's
Hmm.
just really tragic. But it brings to light that, there are real mental health issues that people go through,
Yeah.
oftentimes corroborating addiction issues.
Yeah.
And we never know or we don't always know on the surface, people who might look like they should have it all together or do have it all together, or we can't understand why they wouldn't be happy or whatever, how they're often suffering in silence
Yeah.
and often just feeling so alone and in pain. And I grieve for that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about my life. But before I do that, what were your reactions to hearing that news? How have you processed that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. It's certainly like one of the dark things that comes with probably being a professional golfer is that, you've got a lot of money and you've got a lot of temptations, and then you're also, dealing with the stress of like having to make cuts and keep your status on tour, and perhaps try like disappointing your family if you don't make it. They're not gonna be able to tell people that, hey, my kid's on the PGA Tour, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's got to
Yeah.
be stressful.
Yeah. And we saw a top female golfer at the age of 29 announce her retirement yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been playing for a long time, since she was a teenager.
Yeah.
And she noted that it's a lonely life.
Yeah.
And that's got to blow people away. But it made me think about the guy that I've talked about before, who is the best guy that I've ever been in a group with.
Mm-hmm.
Shot 69 twice on our course. And I was talking to, and had played college golf at a major university and stuff. And I remember talking to him about making the tour, and he had given it a go. But he said, he didn't enjoy the life at all. He missed his family, the stress of it, the anxiety that came along with it. It just wasn't for him. And so he decided to go for a more stable life.
Yeah.
And I think people who in this country are so consumed with the idea of making it rich because we see that glamorous lifestyle can't understand that. But I do think you get to a point in your life where maybe you realize that all the money in the world isn't going to cure what's kind of broken in your heart and in your mind.
Yeah. Your personal happiness is, can't really put a value on that, right?
Yeah, right. And, this hits close to home to me because, some listeners might be familiar, some maybe not. Many maybe have read my book where I go much more into detail about it. And, I kind of threw my life away a number of years ago. And I've used the game of golf, and specifically my life as a caddy, to start to find healing and to have it put back together. And that has, been a slow process. And there's many, many, many good things and growth that has come from it. But I was in that position in my life in the past where people put me on a pedestal, where it looked like I should be happy. And I pretty much lived every day in fear. That's probably a good word for it, is when you live in fear. That's just a really, really sad existence. For me, it was, fear of criticism, fear of letting people down, fear of not being good enough. All of those things added up and made me feel like this big. So to be more clear for listeners, in my former life before caddying, I was actually a pastor. Many of you know that. Some of you might not, and your jaw just kind of dropped. Not a lot of guys with that pedigree in the caddy shack, are there, Nick?
No, not many. No, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, not many. And to be honest, it's something that when I first came here, I was really embarrassed about and quiet about, and so I kept it, at arm's length, and I emphasized other things about my past. For instance, I was an administrator of a school, and so when people asked me what I did, I said I was a school administrator, which was true, but it wasn't the whole story.
Yeah.
There was more to it than that.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said I heard that about you. Like I think like one of the first two stories I heard about you, I was like, school administrator, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, it's true. I was. I helped lead a school and, really oversaw the operations or the staff hire, all that kind of stuff. But there was more to it. And I was keeping that kind of on the down low. as I worked through some stuff. And, now I regret it, knowing that, quite frankly, the Caddy Shack is the place where either, guys don't care because they're in their own world, or most have had their own issues and fall. Yeah. Would you say that that's something that actually provides you a little bit of comfort, Nick, in a weird way? Yeah. That it's maybe a little less judgmental place?
Yeah, it's definitely a place where, you're probably not going to get judged too much. The only thing they're really going to judge you about is, how good of a golfer you are, or how good you can read a putt, and it's even usually good natured, and yeah.
No, I agree, and I think most guys have had their own ups and downs, and know that life can happen. Mine was a unique story, but I was in this position where on the outside it looked like I was really good at it, and so that covered and masked a lot of other things that were underneath. And then that eventually manifested itself in excessive drinking. I became a people pleaser. Yeah. And so, for instance, you'd go to a bar and I'd have trouble leaving because maybe it wasn't busy, and I'd feel like I'd be letting the bartender down and she wouldn't make enough money that night. I mean, people who are not struggling with some of these demons hear that and think it sounds ridiculous. And yet it's a real thing that as you're going through it, it makes total sense to you. Eventually I started to misuse money, trying to please people, excessive giving to people, trying to help people out of a jam so that I could be a hero. And so you'd move money from here to there and wherever, and before you know it, it just snowballed from one bad decision to a next. And then things look even worse than they were, but they were plenty bad enough. And then there's things that weren't bad, but then they looked bad because, how are you going to get the benefit of the doubt or whatever? And so then life just becomes this mess. And not only are you living in fear of just all the things like, oh man, what if the church doesn't grow enough? People are going to criticize. What if the church doesn't get enough offerings and there's going to be struggles? What if, the church down the road, they like the pastor more there? Whatever. There's all this stuff. And I was just a victim to that fear. And then I was also the victim of the fear of, man, I know that I'm not living the right life here and I'm going to get caught out. And in a way, it put my life through hell for that to happen and be caught out. But on the other hand, it was a relief because I didn't want to live that way. I didn't want to be that person. And so eventually, I'm with a loss of a career, uprooting my family, moving to a new state, embarrassed, totally sad that I hurt people that I love, ashamed, lost numerous relationships, and about as low as a person could, and again, fearful about what was going to happen as repercussions from all of that mess.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for that all to be sorted out for a number of reasons, including COVID and stuff. And I was in a position where I can understand and empathize with what led Grayson Murray to do what he did.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you can kind of get it, Nick, where maybe somebody feels so low or so hopeless, so out of touch, so just lost that in that moment they could make a decision that unfortunately they can't take back?
Yeah, I do totally understand that. I mean, just sometimes things just become overwhelming, and you just feel like you're never gonna get out of that hole, right? And I don't know. I kind of just always in the back of my head, I'm always just thinking, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better, and it usually does. And I know you're a good example of it, right? Like you thought, maybe you messed everything up, and then you come here and you meet some cool people and find a cool job, and
Yeah. No, and I think that's one of the things that has become my life's verse, so to speak, my life's goal, is that having been where I've been and feeling like I have felt, I I take it seriously that I want people who are hurting to know that there is the possibility of a brighter day, that there is
Mm-hmm.
hope. And then I want to walk alongside people if they have me or let me and help them get to that point, do what it takes to help them get there. Because I had a select few people in my life who stood beside me, and those are people who now are like, you're like this with them. You're so entwined. These people, if they called me and said, Mark, I need you, I would drop everything
Yeah.
and go and do that because of the difference they've made in my life. But specifically, caddying, it was something that literally was like my brother-in-law had mentioned at a Christmas. I hear they do good, make good money and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so I look it up, and one thing leads to another, and here I am becoming a caddy. And we've talked on here about how little I knew about doing it and the game of golf, but it has been, there's things about it that are so helpful, that help you to manage anxiety and stress.
Mm-hmm.
When you go on the course, Nick, and you
Mm-hmm.
walk all those miles and you get that
Yeah.
exertion, I mean, do you just feel better at the end of the day?
Yeah, yeah, I feel better, and then it kind of when you're sitting around, you feel a little worse, but you get a good night's sleep, and then
Yeah.
you're back at it the next day, and it's
Yeah.
just yeah,
Actually, it's funny you say that, because yesterday I did 2 loops, about
yeah,
16 miles, 4 bags.
yeah.
And on the one hand, I'm incredibly thankful that I'm able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I woke up in the middle of the night, and my left calf was like, it looked like there was like a snake crawling around in it. It was like
Yeah,
rippling. And then
man.
I got up, and my right side and my groin and what just tightened up to the point where I actually had to hold myself up by the wall
Wow.
and kind of get things stretched out as I was going to the bathroom. I mean, it
Yeah.
was like, okay, maybe drink a little more water next
Mm-hmm.
time you double loop, and stretch more, and also just avoid double loops. I mean, there's all those
Yeah,
things.
try your
So,
best, really.
yeah, yeah. But we get to go out somewhere and we get to see something that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
We get to be in community with people, whether it's the
Mm-hmm.
fellow caddies or the groups we're with, and we get to exert ourselves and get an honest day's work. And when you think about it, I know that a lot of our listeners may have different religious backgrounds, no religious backgrounds, lapsed religious backgrounds, you know, confused religious backgrounds, whatever. They may not share the faith that I have had and still have, and or my background. And yet I think the things that we have caddying translate into both worlds,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of universally good for people. Like they're the way life was designed to be in beauty, be with people,
Mm-hmm.
do good work. And if you do that, you stand a better chance of finding some hope, some healing, and some growth. So, what's the thing about caddying that has been the most meaningful in your life, Nick? Besides, of course, you want to make money.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just the connections you can make with people. And like it doesn't happen all the time, and probably less for me than you. I think you're probably easier to connect with than I am, but um, it's always really fun for me when I connect with somebody because I don't know, it just doesn't always happen for me. So
Yeah.
when you meet somebody who's really cool and you're just vibing with them, and I mean, it actually happened for me this week. I had a 2-day request, and me and this guy were just, we were just
Yeah.
on the same level, and it was awesome. And he was sinking every putt, and it was just so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, I think that you're a natural introvert. I'm actually very uncomfortable when I'm in a situation that I'm not familiar with or whatever. Like
Hmm.
I think I'm called what some people would call an introverted extrovert. Like if I'm not
Hmm.
comfortable, I'll kind
Yeah.
of go and. But once I am, I'm raring to go.
Mhm.
On the flip side, I'll say I had a loop the other day that is a very nice guy. Nothing wrong with the guy, but sometimes we get some people who are pretty important at their jobs, and
Mhm.
Unfortunately, maybe they have to take a call or whatever, and this person happened to do that for a number of holes, and they were really apologetic later, but there was just you're to like the sixth hole before you even feel like you can say something to them, because up until then we're basically like pointing or whispering or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even think he ever actually learned my name, and good guy. And I'll say that I was just a couple times I whispered to the other caddy, "Oh, this is awkward," and the other caddy is someone who'd be like, "This is great," because he worked so hard at it. But I know that life is better when we're making connections, and that's been a huge part for me, because when you feel like you've lost all these connections that were so meaningful to you for 15 years, deep, intimate relationships, and then all of a sudden a lot of them are lost, you crave that in your life. And so I pour myself into the players, and most of the times it's cool. Sometimes, it's not as great. What was super cool about that loop, though, is you're like, I hope he had a good time. He was so distracted that I don't think he played his best. I mean, he was like a good player, but he didn't play his best. And we get to the 18th hole, which is the hardest hole on our golf course. Over the course of 6 years, I've seen 8 birdies on that hole, which is only 2 more than the number of hole-in-ones I've seen. So, I mean, that tells you how hard it is. And hits and we had, a very windy day. And he hits a drive 206 yards away from the flag. And so that's a hard second shot into a hole that's protected. On left of the flag is 100% carry for that 206 yards. Yeah. And then right of the flag, there's a tiny little opening to the green before you drive the ball into a bunch of hills and bunkers. So low percentage. And he put the ball an inch from the hole. So not only did he become my 9th birdie with a tap in, he was the first of the season, and an inch away from being the first eagle I've ever seen on that hole.
Yeah, I've never seen an eagle on that one.
Yeah, and so then at that point, though, golf becomes this beautiful shared experience. We go to, you're fist bumping and hugging, and he's smiling, and the whole day has kind of turned around in a way that, he's going to remember and he's going to take back with him. And I find real joy in that. That's been therapeutic for me, to be able to share those kind of moments with people. And they've been a contributing factor to my healing from the past. But people out there, what I want you to understand, when somebody screws up their life, when somebody is an addict, when somebody is, in a position that you see and they're kind of at the depths, and a lot of it is self-induced or all of it, we don't condone that or justify that. But what I will say is, I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to be a bad person. I want to make bad decisions. I want to let people down. Grayson Murray didn't wake up one day and say, I want to struggle with alcohol. I want to have issues that are so serious that I feel like there's no way out but then to take my life. And he didn't wake up and say, I want to leave all this carnage and hurt and heartache behind. That's not how it works. Most people aren't just this terrible, evil manifestation. We all have in us brokenness, and we don't have enough time to go through why some people seem to have it together and why some don't, or how even some people who have it together, we could give a list of things about them that maybe aren't as great as they like to think,
Yeah.
But I guess I would just say that in light of that, I encourage people to be kind. I encourage people to remember that you don't know what everybody's going through. And that when somebody falls, and this happens online, when you see somebody have a bad day, somebody who's notable makes a bad decision, Nick, and you go online, you go on social media, what are people doing?
Yeah, they're like trolling him. I don't understand. I just don't get like the whole trolling thing. Like even people that troll you, I just don't really understand that at all.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I don't get much of it in the comments, but
yeah,
you get a comment every now and then that you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh my goodness gracious,"
Yeah,
and and but like, there's some people that's all they get.
yeah.
And but also like you think about somebody who has their worst day. Say an athlete gets caught with a DWI or
Hmm.
worse or whatever.
Hmm.
People just pile on and pile on and pile on.
Yeah.
And what somebody's going to do right now is confuse me to say, "Oh, those things are okay." Don't. No, what I'm saying is, don't use that person's worst day
Hmm.
to feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
And by throwing that stuff out there and piling on, instead of seeking to be empathetic, instead of seeking to do something positive with that information, what you're doing is piling on so that you can say that person's a bad person. And because I didn't do that particular thing, which I have deemed as bad, then I'm a good person.
Hmm.
I always say that the best thing that happened to husbands out there back in the day related to golf was when Tiger Woods got caught with his infidelities. Because all of a sudden, guys who might be not that great of husbands, may not help around the house, may not parent the kids, all that, whatever,
Yeah.
they're like, at least I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And they feel better about themselves. And then they pile on. And I just think it's not only deadly to the person who's going through that pain, because if we're really serious about wanting people to not have that kind of destructive behavior,
Hmm.
then we need to find ways to help them and to love them and care for them, knowing that sometimes it's going to fail or not work, and they might reject it. Okay,
Yeah.
we can only control what we can control, but also knowing that it's probably deadly to you because you're lulling yourself into this uh, belief that you're okay or that you're not in danger of making the same choices. We're all one bad choice away from
Yeah.
some things really blowing up.
Yeah.
And I'd
Exactly.
encourage us all to be humble.
Hmm. I completely agree. Yeah. Definitely show grace to other people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, um, Nick, there's a few things though. Again, that also I think one of the reasons why caddying has been so meaningful to me is, like I said, I know people are all over the religious spectrum, and this isn't a specifically religious show, or my Twitter isn't, and all of that. Like, I love people and care for them regardless of their background or beliefs. But there are a lot of parallels, and I write about this in my book, Caddie Tales. There are a lot of parallels, and I call the chapter "A New Congregation"
Mhm.
because I see a ton of things that were like maybe caddying's been natural to me because um, there's a lot of things that translate. Maybe a few more f bombs
Yeah.
out on the golf course, or maybe just a few more f bombs, in front of me. I'm sure there were plenty that I didn't hear back in my old job.
True.
Yeah, but one of the things I threw out to you is both places, churches, golf courses, they're kind of grand cathedrals.
Hmm.
They're meant to be beautiful. They're meant to say we're special, we're set apart. We know some are more than others.
Hmm.
So you got St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, or Westminster Abbey, or St. Patrick's in New York, whatever. Those are some grand cathedrals.
Hmm.
What are the golf grand cathedrals to you, Nick? What are your
Uh,
holy? What's your holy land?
well, I went all resort courses and not anything private. So I just stuck to like the three big ones in mind. Behind our course, of course, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I went Pinehurst, Pebble Beach, and Bandon Dunes. Those are
Okay.
the three big
Yeah,
ones.
yeah. Now I think most if golf Twitter is as predictable as I think it is sometimes, Augusta's the
Yeah,
number one, even for
of
people who've
course.
never seen it or have no chance
Yeah.
of
I was just going
you know.
resort courses, nothing
Yeah,
private.
right, right, yeah. And I've heard about Cypress Point, so another private.
Hmm.
When I see pictures of places like Bandon Dunes,
Hmm.
unbelievable. it's all relative, isn't it? You're comparing beautiful to beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all
And
awesome.
I think the point being is, it's good to have places in our lives that are set apart, that are considered special places. For all of us, should be our home, for one, and it's a safe place, for instance. But for a lot of us listening, a golf course is a set apart place that we go to and we find release, we find relief, we find beauty that means something to us. It stirs something up in us, and we're meant to have a life like that. And so that's why whenever anybody asks me, does this ever get old? I'm like, no. I mean, I look out every day and I marvel at what has been made.
Yeah.
And give thanks for it. Okay, so just like in churches, in the game of golf, we've got some pretty strict diehards, don't we? Some pretty strict adherents to the game. Do you meet any golf nuts throughout the season, Nick? Did you have any this week who are just like, it's their passion?
Yeah, I had lots of Ryder Cups this week. I think almost every day I had Ryder Cups, and those can be a little intense, especially with the rules and everything. And then you're kind of throwing into the fact that we've got a lot of bunkers, and a lot of them are pretty wet right now with the 20 inches of rain. So there's a lot of rules, and different ways that people kind of create rules, and it was kind of a nightmare as far as being a caddy this week, but yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and pace of play. Oh my goodness! So there's something. You hear the complaint in both places. When I worked in a church, when I work on a golf course, there are people who say it's too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so that might not be one of the things that I love about, although I want it to be quicker out on the golf course. I guess I was the one causing it not to be quicker back in the church. But anyways, but okay, so there's strict adherence, there's diehards. Now, there's also the lukewarm. Like yesterday in my second loop, I caddied for somebody who's lukewarm. A ton of people in churches, too many, and this is actually something that caused me tremendous anxiety and grief. A lot of them are there when it's convenient, get involved when it's convenient, will leave you if something's inconvenient or they don't like it. And it causes deep pain. Deep pain.
Yeah.
By the way, just a quick aside, for anybody who doesn't really understand what I'm talking about, just yesterday, the front page of the USA Today ran a front page article about the mental health of American pastors and how it's in huge decline. And I'll tell you, I walked 16 miles yesterday. I had 4 bags, all weighing like 30 pounds apiece. Traversed back and forth, looked for balls. Nothing comes close to being as hard as the 15 years that I spent working in a church. And so I never, no matter how hurt I am by some folks still there, no matter what I see, I'm very careful to just label anyone who falls a hypocrite, one, knowing my own life, but two, knowing how painful and hard that position is, okay? Just trust me out there, folks. It is a lonely, difficult life. And a lot of times these guys are in a position where people are like, we come to you with our problems, and they don't have anyone to turn to with their problems. And that's why they end up doing some dumb things like getting involved with alcohol or misuse money or pornography or any of the things that you read about. Again, none of it's right. I'm not condoning it. Okay, so with that said, you have the lukewarm that are there in churches, cause a lot of pain. On the flip side, my second loop yesterday was 4 guys who didn't give a crap at all. And we're there because it was like a business thing, and the course is beautiful and much easier to caddy for than some of those Ryder Cup matches that you were talking about. Even though the golf wasn't as good, much easier to caddy for. How do you like? Do you like getting the occasional group that just doesn't care, Luke? I mean,
I do. So I don't like the guys that don't take it serious, like don't practice and then have super high expectations. I don't like those guys.
Yeah, and so yesterday, this guy, super cool guy, the guy who was kind of the lead of the group, and you could tell he could be good if he played more than a few times a year. Like he
Yeah.
had talent and skill, but he was just so casual and laid back, and you can tell he was probably a big deal at his job. You know, just everything about him said successful guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we get those guys who are still slamming their clubs or f bombing and whatever, and then they'll tell you, yeah, this is the first time I've played in a year or whatever.
Yeah.
He actually said this specific comment yesterday. He goes, I've learned not to have any expectations from something I put nothing into. Like, I'm like, can you please like make T-shirts up for that we sell in the pro shop? You know, and so that's when I mean like the kind of the lukewarm guy who don't they're there because it's fun, they're with their buddies, it's beautiful. Every now and then that's a relief because it's mentally less taxing and stuff. Maybe physically it's a little more. But you have your strict adherents, your diehards. In churches, they tend not to be as much of a struggle or a problem because they're very mature. On the course, it can be a little harder. In churches, you have your lukewarm. On the course, a little easier. Whereas in churches, it's quite a stressful thing and stuff. Then Nick, what was another thing I had here? That there's no shortage of critics, and I guess I've kind of touched on that. Do you ever get critiqued on the golf course as a caddy?
Yeah, I mean, constantly with reads and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm good for probably one bad read around, but I feel like that's not bad. That's like what, like 95% at least. So
Yeah.
it's not too bad.
Yeah. I spent my former life living in constant fear of what was going to come through on email that day. It was almost always through email because people didn't want to come and talk face to face and stuff. But just whatever it was, like this change or that, you didn't say hello friendly enough, whatever, just constant critiques. And the beauty of dealing with them on the golf course, why I find caddying easier, is that I don't need to have an ongoing, deep, committed, intimate relationship with the people I caddy for.
Yeah.
It's a 5-hour contract.
Yeah.
And during that 5 hours, you can pour yourself into them. And, but when it's over, 99% of the time, it's just over. And that's okay in some cases because maybe it's just not a fit, it's not a connection, but you did what you can do and stuff. And then, the last one I'd kind of touch on is that both places have serious traditions they take seriously.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that even non-church goers would know as far as traditions that churches have. But on the course, what's your favorite tradition, Nick? Something that we see all the time.
Yeah, I did the so getting a hole in one, you buy a couple beverages for your friends. But a new one I've seen too now that I think sobriety's in a little bit. People are buying like golf shoes for their buddies, which I think is pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a new one.
That's gonna be okay. I like that. Yeah, because now there are people who are drinking like non-alcoholic beer or not. By the way, that leads to something, and probably a good kind of way to cap this conversation. I got a message from somebody the other day on DM that I have caddied for in the past, and they've just become more familiar with me and my story. And they DM'd me to say that, when I caddied for them, they were about a month into their sobriety journey. And they were very, very scared about coming to the golf course. And I think so was their spouse because of the buddies trip. And, we see on buddies trips, oftentimes guys just let loose, And he said, being with me put him at ease.
That's
and
awesome.
I actually kind of got goosebumps when I read that. It's hard to describe how much that means to me because, and it doesn't have to be about sobriety. Maybe somebody's not struggling with that, but we all have our problems. And I just would like to think that the one thing I've taken out of my my struggles is to be a more empathetic person. And that doesn't mean I don't have strong views. I have very strong views on a number of things: politics, religion, social issues of our time, economic policies, all that. I have very strong views. But if I haven't been asked for them, I don't necessarily feel the need to always share them. And then also, regardless of those views, the person across from me is deserving of my care and compassion and empathy. And I think that that's just how we were designed to live. And if we would do that, we would help, maybe not eliminate, but help stem some of the struggles that so many people go through. Because I suffered in silence. I suffered in fear. I suffered afraid of judgment. I suffered just feeling like, if I can't let all these people down, and it only gets worse. That's the kind of confusing part, is it only, the more you hide in this pain, the more it tends to snowball, even though you know it's killing you. Even though you know it's killing you. It's kind of like alcohol. For a lot of people, it's this liar. It pretends to be your friend, but it's slowly killing you. And so I just think we need to be more empathetic. And to get a message like that means the world. And I hope that that's just the tone that I can have on social media, and the tone that I can have on this podcast, but more importantly, the tone that I have in life. So, Nick, as we close here, good caddy, bad caddy, what's something you did good this week?
I did a great job on the Ryder Cups. I mean, I think my teams won almost all their matches, so that was nice. One of our matches was over after hole 11, so that was really nice.
Yeah,
It's kind of easy the rest of the day.
I caddied in the rain all Sunday for a Ryder Cup match, and my players were giving off all the vibes that when the match was done, they'd go in because it was raining. So and then the match ended on 15, and we didn't go in, Nick. We just played them out, and
Heartbreak.
Yeah,
Ouch.
It is what it is, I guess. For me, I'm going to actually twist something we've talked about in the Bad Caddy segment for a couple of times, is just wanting to be able to be healthier out there and keep up. Yesterday, doing 2 loops, I just, 4 bags. I stayed strong pretty much through the, it was 10 straight hours out there. We kind of finished one loop and had to go right to the next. Yeah. And both loops went 5 hours. So it was pretty much 10 straight hours out on the golf course. Stayed strong. The only thing is, I did take a fall earlier in the week. I slipped because it was so wet coming down a hill and fell right on my back pretty hard. And that's a little tight, but I'm thankful that I've lost some weight and that I'm getting stronger. And I felt like I provided good service to the players this last double loop. What's something you wish you had back in the Bad Caddy portion of the segment, Nick?
I'm gonna give a shout out to one of our viewers. He had a loop where he knew it was gonna be bad, and he was not very happy about it at the start. But he turned it around. So shout out.
We're gonna give him a shout out. Okay.
Yeah, shout out to him. Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of the program. So
a friend of the program, right? Yes. Yeah. Sometimes guys can get a little bit. They can jump to a quick conclusion, and it doesn't turn out to be that way. So best to probably just try to go in with a good attitude. Yeah. Yeah. For me, as far as Bad Caddy, I think that during some of the rain, I'm mailing it in a little bit as far as the precise info that I'm getting. It's like, I just want to get done. And it's like, let's go. I just, I got to remember, I got to do a better job of remembering that, I'm out in the rain all the time and I'm sick of it. But for them, they spent money and it's their first time in the rain there. So suck it up and give them the experience they deserve. But man, it gets old. It gets old.
It's hard.
Please, listeners out there, wish upon us a better June, okay? And we don't want to scare anyone away from coming to Wisconsin. It's great, but it just was abnormally wet
Insane.
May. Yeah. But okay, hope you enjoyed this. You know, if you have any questions or comments, friends out there, if something sparked in this, shoot me a DM. Find me at Caddie Tales on X, and also if you want me to pass something along to Nick, please feel free to do so. Would love to engage. Maybe there's something we said that you misunderstand or that I wasn't clear on. But most of all, we're here to try to provide a positive presence and say, we've got a good life getting to do what we do. Because every day we are reminded of this, that no matter where you've been, no matter how many shanks, no matter how many flubs or misses, the game of life is just like the beautiful game of golf. There's always a next shot. So take yours.